within the Democratic Republic of Congo, a remarkable discovery sends shockwaves through a remote community. A mountain rich in gold is uncovered, offering what appears to be a pathway out of poverty for thousands of struggling families. For many villagers, it feels like a miracle, but in a country blessed with immense natural wealth and burdened by generations of hardship, such a miracle often comes at a cost. This is not simply a story about gold. It is a story about the painful contradiction that the heart of one of Africa's richest nations, a country overflowing with valuable resources, yet home to millions living in extreme poverty. It is a story of how a blessing can quickly turn to a curse. What began as a viral sensation soon revealed a much deeper reality. The discovery of gold in the Congo is only the latest chapter in centuries. Old patterns of exploitation, one that has reportedly prevented the country's wealth from benefiting its own people. To understand why, we must look beyond the excitement of today and revisit the events that shaped the Congo's past. Because in this land, history is never far away. It continues to influence the present. The story begins with a moment of hope. Videos spread rapidly across social media showing scenes of excitement and celebration in the village of Luhi, located in South Kivu province. Residents had discovered that an entire mountain contained exceptionally high concentration of gold. Men, women, and children rushed to the site, digging into the earth with shovels, pickaxes, and even their bare hands. Bags of soils were carried away, filled with gold-rich dirt that sparkled under the sunlight. For the people of Luhihi, this discovery represented far more than wealth. It represented opportunity. In a region where employment is scarce and survival is often a daily struggle, the mountain seemed to offer a chance of a better future. Imagine a man named Jean-Pierre. He is not one individual, but a symbol of 1,000 of Congolese citizens. For years, he has struggled to provide for his family, pay school fees, and afford basic health care. Now, for the first time, he sees a possible escape from poverty. As he digs alongside his neighbors, exhausted but determined, he dreams of building a better home, educating his children, and creating a future free from constant financial uncertainty. This was the first stage of the gold rush, a period defined by hope, excitement, and possibility. Thousands of people poured into the area. Temporary camps emerged around the mountain as people searched for their share of the newfound wealth. Dust filled the air while streams became gathering places where miners washed the soil, revealing tiny flakes and nuggets of gold. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the Congo's wealth finally belonged to the ordinary Congolese citizen. Yet, beneath the celebration lay dangerous reality. The gold may have formed over millions of years through immense geological force, but another force was already beginning to move towards Luhihi. The long history of greed and exploitation that has haunted the Congo for generations. The same videos that spread joy across the world also attracted attention from powerful interests far beyond the village. The dream that had inspired thousands was built on fragile foundation. The people of Luhihi were unknowingly standing at the edge of a familiar cycle, one that has repeated itself throughout Congolese history. To understand the cycle, we must travel back more than a century. The exploitation of Congo's resources did not begin with this gold discovery. It began during the late 19th centuries where European powers divided Africa among themselves. What would later become the Democratic Republic of Congo was once known as the Congo Free State, one of history's most misleading names. The territory was neither truly free nor a genuine state. Instead, it became the personal possession of Belgium's King Leopold II. At the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885, Leopold persuaded European leaders that his intentions in the Congo were humanitarian. He spoke of ending slavery, promoting development, and bringing civilization to Central Africa. Behind these promises, however, lay a very different objectives: the extraction of wealth on a massive scale. What followed became one of the most brutal systems of exploitation in modern history. Although Leopold never personally visited the Congo, his policy transformed the territory into a vast machine designed to generate profits. Initially, ivory was the primary target. Later, as global demand for rubber exploded, the Congo became one of the world's most important sources of these valuable resources. To maximize production, local communities were forced to meet impossible collection quotas. Leopold's private colonial army, known as the Force Publique, enforced these demands through violence and intimidation. Women and children were frequently taken hostage until villages delivered the required amount of rubber. Those who failed faced severe punishment, including brutal beatings, executions, and the destruction of entire communities. What was presented to the world as a humanitarian project became a system of terror driven by greed. Millions of Congolese suffered under a regime that viewed the country's people and resources as commodities to be exploited for profit. And while the methods may have changed over time, many would argue that the underlying pattern remains the same today. The horrifying brutality of the system reached its peak through a policy that became infamous across the Congo. Soldiers were required to account for every bullet they used by presenting the severed right hand of a victim. Officially, this was meant to prove ammunition had not been wasted on hunting. In reality, it created one of the most disturbing symbols of colonial cruelty. When villages failed to meet impossible production quotas, soldiers often cut off the hands of living men, women, and children instead of those already killed. One of the most heartbreaking images from that era showed a Congolese father named Salah staring in grief at the severed hand and foot of his young daughter, who had been murdered because his community failed to collect enough rubber. That photograph would later become a powerful symbol of the suffering inflicted under colonial rule. The violence was not random. It was a deliberate system designed to maximize profits through fear and intimidation. Combined with disease, starvation, and forced labor, historians estimate that between 10 and 15 million Congolese people died during King Leopold II's rule. Some estimates suggest this represented nearly half of the country's population at the time. It was one of the deadliest episodes of exploitation in modern history, driven almost entirely by greed. The scars left behind would shape the Congo for generations, even after international outrage forced Leopold to surrender control of the territory to the Belgian government in 1908. The underlying mindset remained unchanged. The Congo was still viewed as a land to be exploited rather than developed. But when independence finally arrived in 1960, many hoped the nation could begin a new chapter. Instead, decades of colonial neglect left the country without strong institutions or an experienced administrative class. Political instability quickly followed. Patrice Lumumba, the Congo's first democratically elected prime minister, sought to build an independent and sovereign nation. However, during the height of the Cold War, his nationalist policy alarmed foreign powers. He was eventually assassinated in a plot involving both Belgians and American interests. The vacuum that followed opened the door for the new ruler. In 1965, military officer Joseph Désiré Mobutu seized power and later renamed the country Zaire. Over the next 3 decades, Mobutu transformed state corruption into an art form, backed by Western governments. Because of his strong anti-communist stance, he received vast amounts of financial and military support. Rather than investing in development, he diverted enormous wealth into his personal fortune. His government became one of the world's most notorious kleptocracies. Revenues from the country's rich deposits of copper, cobalt, and other valuable resources flowed into private accounts, while public services deteriorated. Mobutu is believed to have stolen between $4 and $15 billion during his time in power. While he enjoyed luxury lifestyles, private aircrafts, and extravagant trips abroad, ordinary citizens faced worsening poverty, collapsing infrastructure, and declining healthcare. By the late 1980s, diseases such as tuberculosis and leprosy were spreading rapidly throughout the country, yet public investment remained minimal. Once again, the Congo's extraordinary wealth enriched a small elite, while the majority of its people struggled to survive. When Mobutu's regime finally collapsed in 1997, hopes for change resurfaced. But instead, the countries descended into an even more devastating conflict. What became known as the Great War of Africa would claim more than 5.4 million lives, making it the deadliest conflict since World War II. At the center of this catastrophe was the fight for control of Congo's immense mineral wealth. This time, the focus extended beyond copper and cobalt to include diamonds, tin, tungsten, and coltan, a mineral essential for modern electronics such as mobile phones, laptops, and other digital devices. Military forces from multiple neighboring countries, including Rwanda and Uganda, became involved, either directly or through proxy armed groups. While security concerns were often cited as justification, the conflict increasingly evolved into a struggle for control over lucrative mining regions. Armed factions, military commanders, and warlords turned resources extraction into a business model. This period gave rise to the term conflict minerals. The profit generated from mining operations funded weapons purchases, while those weapons enabled groups to seize and defend even more mineral-rich territory. The result was a vicious cycle in which natural resources fueled violence, and violence secured access to natural resources. This is the historical shadow hanging over the mountain of gold discovered in Luhi, from Leopold's rubber empire to Mobutu's resource plunder and the minerals wars that followed. The pattern has remained remarkably consistent. Different actors have emerged over time, but the fundamental story has changed little. So when the people of Luhi celebrated their discovery with such excitement and hope, they were not simply digging for gold, they were uncovering a legacy shaped by centuries of exploitation, and soon they would learn that the forces which had profited from Congo's riches for generations had never truly disappeared. The dangers surrounding the gold rush soon extended far beyond economic exploitation. Artisanal mining is widely regarded as one of the world's most dangerous occupations, and in Luhi, safety precautions were almost non-existent. Driven by the promise of quick wealth, miners dug deep into unstable ground using little more than shovels, pickaxes, and their bare hands. Narrow tunnels stretched far underground without proper support structures, ventilation system, or engineering oversight. Every excavation carried enormous risk. A single landslide could bury dozens of workers within seconds. Heavy rainfalls posed another constant threat, capable of flooding tunnels and trapping miners underground before they had any chance to escape. The early images that captured global attention, filled with excitement and optimism, gradually gave way to a much harsher reality. What appeared to be an opportunity for prosperity increasingly resembled a dangerous gamble where a few grams of gold could cost a person their life. These dangers were not merely theoretical. In April 2025, a tragic mine collapse in Luhi claimed the lives of at least 10 miners. Similar incidents occurred regularly across artisanal mining regions, often receiving little international attention. Behind every story of someone striking gold are countless stories of workers who never returned home. Those fortunate enough to survive underground hazard often face another threat that is less visible but equally devastating. Extracting gold from ore typically involves the use of mercury, a highly toxic substance. Miners mix mercury with crushed rocks, creating an amalgam that binds to the gold particles. The amalgam is then heated to evaporate the mercury and leave the gold behind. This process usually takes place in open spaces, often near homes and communities. As the mercury burns away, toxic vapors are released into the atmosphere, exposing miners, their families, and nearby residents to severe health risks. The contamination does not stop there. Mercury seeps into the soil and waterways, poisoning rivers, fish populations, and agricultural lands. The long-term consequences are devastating. Mercury exposure can cause permanent neurological disorder, kidney damage, development problems in children, and serious birth defects. In effect, many miners are sacrificing their future health in exchange for immediate survival. The mountain that promised prosperity was increasingly becoming a source of illness and environmental destruction. And as the wealth began flowing into the region, other predictable consequences emerged, such as violence. In eastern Congo, valuable natural resources often attract armed groups eager to seize control. The gold rush in Luhi was no exception. Various militias and rebel movements operating throughout the region quickly took notice. Among them were groups such as the M23 rebels, who recognized the economic opportunities presented by the booming mining site. These organizations rarely participate in mining themselves. Instead, they focus on controlling territory and extracting profits from those who do the work. Roadblocks appeared around mining areas, where armed groups demanded payments from miners, traders, and transporters. These payments were not legitimate taxes used to support public services. They were forms of extortion enforced through intimidation and violence. Anyone refusing to comply, it is harassment, assault, or even death. Armed groups effectively became the governing authority in many areas, transforming what once seemed like a hopeful community-driven enterprise into an environment dominated by fear. And ironically, the very goal that was supposed to improve people's lives was now helping finance the militias that terrorized them. In some cases, even elements within the Congolese security forces became part of the problem, with soldiers and local officials seeking their own share of mining revenues. The result was a system where nearly everyone with power benefited, whilst ordinary miners remained trapped in poverty and insecurity. The story of Luhi gradually came to reflect a broader national tragedy. Extraordinary natural wealth continued to generate hardship instead of prosperity. Gold produced danger rather than development, diseases rather than security, and exploitation rather than opportunity. Yet, this cycle survives largely because it operates far from international attention. The journey of gold does not end when it leaves the hands of the miners. Instead, it enters a complex global network that connects remote villages in Congo to markets around the world. If this cycle is ever to be broken, it must first be understood. Awareness remains one of the most important tools in exposing how resource wealth can be transformed into human suffering. Once extracted, much of the gold from Luhi disappears into an opaque supply chain. Through networks of traders, brokers, and smugglers, the gold is moved across borders into neighboring countries such as Rwanda and Uganda. There, its origins are often disguised through fraudulent documentation or mixed with legal sourced gold before being exported to international markets. Eventually, much of it reaches major refining centers in places such as Dubai and Switzerland, where it becomes virtually impossible to distinguish from legally sourced material. This illicit trade deprives the Congolese government of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue every year, funds that could otherwise support infrastructure, education, healthcare, and economic development. However, artisanal mining represents only one side of Congo's mining sector. Towering above the small-scale operations are massive industrial mining projects run by multinational corporations. One of the most prominent examples is the Kibali gold mine, located in northeastern Congo, operated through a partnership involving the Canadian mining company Barrick Gold, Anglo Gold, Ashanti, and the state-owned company Sokimo. Kibali ranks amongst Africa's largest gold-producing mines. Unlike the hand-dug pits of Luhi, Kibali is an enormous industrial complex equipped with advanced technology and large-scale extraction system. It processes vast quantities of earth and produces hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold annually. Supporters of the project present it as a model for responsible resource development. Barrick Gold frequently highlights its economic contribution, including billions of dollars invested in the Congolese economy, local development initiatives, infrastructure projects, and environmental conservation efforts. The company points to achievements such as supporting community programs and anticipating in wildlife conservation initiatives, including efforts to reintroduce white rhinos into protected areas. From this perspective, Kibali represents a modern partnership capable of generating jobs, investment, and economic growth. Yet, critics argue that another reality exists beneath these success stories. Human rights organizations have documented allegations involving displacement, land disputes, and inadequate compensation for affected communities. A report published in 2024 described claims that thousands of residents were forced to leave their homes to make way for mine expansion projects. In some cases, entire neighborhoods were reportedly demolished, leaving families struggling to build their lives. While mining companies celebrated record production and strong financial performances, many displaced residents faced increased poverty and uncertainty. For critics, this reflects a recurring pattern within Congo's resource sector. Even when extraction is conducted through formal legal channels, the greatest reward often flows elsewhere. Profits are distributed to shareholders and investors across global financial centers, while local communities are left to cope with social disruption, environmental damage, and limited long-term benefit. It is a contradiction that has defined Congo's relationship with its natural resource for generations. A country of ordinary wealth whose people continues to see only a small share of the riches beneath their feet. Alongside Western mining corporations, another major player has emerged as a dominant force in Congo's resource sector in China. Over the past 2 decades, Chinese companies have expanded their presence across the Democratic Republic of Congo, becoming deeply involved in mining activities throughout the country. In South Kivu province, where Luhi is located, local authorities estimate that hundreds of Chinese-owned companies are engaged in gold extraction. Critics argue that many of these operations function outside a legal framework, lacking proper permits and allegedly violating Congolese regulations that restrict foreign participation in artisanal mining activities. To navigate these restrictions, many companies partner with local cooperatives. While these arrangements are presented as collaborative ventures, critics contend that the partnerships are often heavily unequal. Equipped with advanced machineries and substantial financial resources, these operators can extract resources on a scale far beyond the local miners can achieve. The environmental consequences have been severe. Rivers have been diverted, landscapes transformed, and the ecosystem disrupted as heavy equipment excavates large areas of land. Communities living near mining sites frequently report environmental degradation, water contamination, and declining agricultural productivity. There are also repeated allegations involving labor exploitation and disputes with local population. Yet, despite these concerns, enforcement of mining regulations remain inconsistent. In one widely reported case, 17 Chinese nationals arrested on accusations related to illegal gold mining were released shortly afterwards without facing significant penalties. According to reports, powerful political figures in Kinshasa allegedly intervened on their behalf. Such incidents point towards deeper issues that extend beyond foreign companies alone, the role of the Congolese state itself. The Democratic Republic of Congo is not merely a victim of exploitation. In many instances, elements within the geopolitical system have actively benefited from it. The culture of corruption that flourished during Mobutu era continues to influence governance today. From local officials to senior political figures, numerous actors have been accused of facilitating illegal mining activities in exchange for personal gain. Bribes, unofficial payments, and political connection often determine who gains access to valuable resources. As one local religious leader reportedly observed, benefits from mining revenues frequently flow through every level of authority, from village leadership to national institution. This widespread corruption creates a powerful incentive to maintain secrecy. Transparency threatens too many interests. Local brokers, government officials, armed groups, and business operators all operate from the system that remain largely hidden from public scrutiny. At the same time, the weakness of state institutions has become increasingly visible in eastern Congo's ongoing security crisis. Rebel groups such as M23 have seized significant territories, including areas rich in mineral resources. In many regions, these groups have established parallel administrations, collecting taxes and exercising authority traditionally reserved for the state. A striking example occurred in May 2025 when a major gold mining company, partly backed by Chinese investors, reportedly suspended operations after refusing to pay taxes demanded by the M23 administration. The incident highlighted a troubling reality. Armed groups now possess enough influence to disrupt large-scale industrial mining operations. The fact that a rebel movement can effectively halt activities at a major mine illustrates the extent to which state authority has eroded. In many parts of eastern Congo, the government struggles to maintain control over its territories, protect local communities, or manage its own natural resources. This vacuum of authority creates ideal conditions for exploitation. The global extraction network thrives amid instability because chaos often benefits those seeking access to valuable minerals with minimal oversight. Yet, beyond all these geopolitical struggles, corporate interests and armed conflicts are ordinary people whose lives continues to be shaped by forces far beyond their control. Let us return one final time to Luhi and the individuals whose hope first captured the world's attention. Think again of Jean-Pierre, the symbolic father whose dreams represented those of countless miners. When gold was first discovered, he imagined a future where his family could escape poverty. He hoped to educate his children, improve his home, and create opportunities that had always seemed out of reach. But reality quickly caught up with those dreams. After selling his first quantities of ore, Jean-Pierre realized the system was designed to keep him dependent. Traders who provided food, equipment, and basic necessity controlled the prices he received for his gold. No matter how hard he worked, the earnings never seemed sufficient to move his family forward. To earn more, he was forced to work longer hours in increasingly dangerous conditions. The mining pits grew deeper, the risks greater, and the rewards remained uncertain. Thus filled the air he breathed every day. Persistent coughing became a constant part of his life. The education he envisaged for his daughter remained financially unattainable. The future he had imagined had not disappeared entirely, but it seemed perpetually out of reach. The experience was similar for many women within the community. Rivers that once supplied clean water became clouded by sentiment and contaminated by mining activities. Fish population declined, reducing an important source of nutrition. Agricultural land was damaged and abandoned as mining expanded. As environmental conditions deteriorated, families faced new and economic challenges. Children became more vulnerable to illness, while household food security weakened. The promise of wealth offered little comfort when the very results that sustained daily life were disappearing. The social consequences proved equally damaging. The arrival of newcomers transformed the character of the community. Increased population brought higher levels of crime, alcohol, abuse, prostitution, and social tension. Traditional leadership structure lost influence as wealth and armed powers became the primary source of authority. Community bonds that had once fostered cooperation and mutual support gradually weakened under the pressure of competition and mistrust. This perhaps is the cruelest aspect of resource curse. Instead of creating prosperity, resource discoveries often generate new forms of dependency and instability. Rather than empowering local populations, they frequently expose communities to exploitation by strong factors. The gold itself is real. It can be seen, touched, and extracted from the earth. Yet, the prosperity it promises often remains elusive. Wealth flows towards traders, politicians, armed groups, foreign corporations, and investors, far removed from the communities where the resources originate. For many residents of Luhi, the gold has brought environmental destruction, health problems, insecurity, and disappointment more than lasting economic transformation. The blessing they celebrated revealed a darker reality, and in many ways, the story of Luhi is not unique. It's another chapter in a pattern that has repeated itself across the Congo for more than a century. From the robber exploitation of King Leopold's era to the mineral conflicts of the modern age, the country's extraordinary natural wealth has repeatedly attracted powerful interests seeking profit. The viral footage from the Luhi captured a rare moment of optimism, belief that perhaps this discovery might finally benefit ordinary Congolese citizens. But the forces shaping the country's resource economy remain deeply entrenched. Colonial legacy, weak governance, corruption, corporate interests, and armed conflict continue to shape outcome long after the initial excitement fades. The discovery of gold did not fundamentally alter the balance of power. Instead, it reinforced the existing system. The gold extracted from Luhi will continue its journey through international markets. It may cross borders through informal networks, be refined in distant facilities, and eventually become part of global financial reserve, luxury jewels, or electronic devices used by millions of people worldwide. In that sense, the story of this mountain reaches far beyond Congo itself. It connects a miner working in a dangerous pit in South Kivu to consumers, investors, and industries across the globe. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. The question is not only why countries blessed with immense natural wealth continues to face such profound challenges. The deeper question is how global systems, economic interests, and consumer demand contribute to sustaining this cycle, and what responsibility the rest of the world bears in changing it. Tell us what you think in the comment section below, and please do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this.